Welcome to My Therapist Says, an interactive experience enriching your most important relationships. I'll be your host and moderator as we present infant loss grief due to miscarriage, stillbirth, labor complications. During this broadcast, I'm joined by Dr. Nikki Watkins, a licensed marriage and family therapist at the Center for Enriching Relationships and the Associate Director of the Cohen Veterans Network at Veterans Village of San Diego. Dr. Watkins specializes in providing therapeutic services to individuals and families who have experienced the loss of a baby through miscarriage, stillbirth, SIDS, premature birth, or illness. Having experienced infant loss herself, she understands the need to have a caring professional walk with the family on the grief journey. Today's event takes place before a live audience and live streaming while offering practical biblical solutions. It's like having your own Christian mental health relationship doctor within the comforts of your living room. I hope you will sit back, relax, and take in these life-changing insights. Please join me as we connect with a live audience and My Therapist Says. Well, again, would you join me in welcoming Dr. Nikki Watkins, who is our special guest this evening and has particular credentials in this particular area of loss and the grief of loss, of infant loss. So important. So welcome, Dr. Watkins, and we thank you for being here this evening.
Okay, thank you for having me.
You're welcome.
Okay, so I will get started. There we are. I have the PowerPoint on the screen. So welcome, everyone. Thank you for coming. Thank you for those of you that are live streaming in. I want to talk about this topic of infant loss grief. And so you can follow along on the PowerPoint. Infant loss definitions, that's what I want to start with. So miscarriage is one type of infant loss. That is the loss of a baby before 20 weeks pregnancy. There's also stillbirth, which is the loss of a baby after 20 weeks pregnancy. So miscarriage is before 20 weeks and stillbirth is after 20 weeks. Infant death, which is due to premature birth or medical complications, is another type of infant loss. Many times that's experienced from a baby being born prematurely, or after birth there may have been some complications with the birth during labor or just with the child. Termination for medical reasons. There are some women, unfortunately, who are required to terminate a pregnancy in order to save their lives. So for medical reasons, they have to terminate the pregnancy, even if they would prefer not to. And SIDS, which is sudden infant death syndrome, and that is when a baby is born and dies within the first year of life for reasons that may not be known. So now let's talk about infant loss statistics. I think this is something that a lot of people may not know about. I know I wasn't aware of the statistics around this. So miscarriage stats. There are approximately 10 to 15 in every 100 pregnancies that ends in miscarriage. And what that number equates to, we'll hit on to the stillbirth stats. About 1 out of every 100 pregnancies is affected by stillbirth. This amounts to approximately 24,000 stillbirths each year in the United States. This number is pretty staggering, and I remember when my family experienced the loss of our daughter through stillbirth. We had no clue that there were this many stillbirths every year in the United States. It's a really big number. Infant mortality after birth. Each year, approximately 24,000 infants as well die in the first year of life. So we already have about 48,000 infants that die per year, either through stillbirth or infant death in the first year of life. So let's talk about why are these stats important. Infant loss is more common than we think or realize. That's number one of why it's important, because many times we only hear about it maybe here or there. We may know someone, but it's really more common than we think. And that's why the stats are important, to raise awareness to how common this really is in our country. Many mothers and fathers who experience infant loss feel alone in their loss. And you can feel weird because if you haven't really experienced this closely with someone, you really don't really know how to navigate it, and you kind of feel like this weird thing has happened to me and what's wrong with me and my family. We're all connected to someone who has experienced infant loss. This is another reason that I wanted to have the statistics, because it is more common than we think. We most likely all know of someone, whether it's family or friends, extended family, who have experienced infant loss. And I really want to bring this topic up and the statistics because there are so many families that suffer in silence. When my family went through our experience with infant loss, we were amazed at how many people came out of the woodworks expressing that they had had instances of infant loss. And these were people that we knew, that we talked to all the time, that we would see at church. And it was just something that people don't talk about. For whatever reason, people will talk about the loss of a father, a mother, a sibling, but talking about the loss of an infant is not something that a lot of people feel comfortable talking about. Not only the person who's experienced it, but even talking to other people about it. For some reason, it's just not comfortable. So that's why I wanted to bring this topic up, to let everyone know that you probably know someone who's lived through this. So let me share a little bit about my story and how this became my specialty. So in 2012, my family and I were expecting our daughter, Riley, and we had gone through baby shower, getting the room together, and we had our C-section date planned. And at 37 weeks pregnancy, just 3 weeks before our surgery date, our daughter was stillborn. We were informed that she no longer had a heartbeat. And our family was devastated, and we were blindsided by this. And we hadn't at that time personally walked through this with anyone, so we didn't know what to expect. And so through that journey, it was a long journey of tears, grief, darkness, confusion, not understanding why, and spiritual healing that had to take place through that season. I was already a therapist before this happened to our family, and so then this caused me to want to specialize in working with other families who've experienced this loss. One of the reasons is because therapy was very key in my healing and in my family's healing. My therapist walked us through this. She was with us every step of the way. And so I wanted to be able to walk with others through this journey. So now let's talk about the journey of grief. Commonly experienced by the mother and father and family members, because we don't want to leave out grandparents, aunts, uncles, cousins, sisters, brothers. There are a lot of people who were expecting this child into the world who now will not be able to have a relationship with this child. So what's experienced is bewilderment and confusion, many times just wondering, how did this happen? Why did this happen? Not really knowing why the pregnancy ended. For some people, they're just told, we're not really sure. Maybe they were healthy throughout the whole pregnancy. They made sure they did everything just right. They ate just right. And just out of the blue for no reason. For some people, they're just confused. They don't know what happened. Loss of purpose. Usually when you are pregnant, you have a purpose that is attached to that pregnancy. So you plan to bring this baby home to mother or father this child, to spend time with this child. And so now what do you do with yourself? What do you do with all those plans that you had? Guilt and shame. There's a lot of times where parents may feel like, what did I do wrong? Where did I miss this? Did I not take care of my body right? Did I do something wrong? Did I sit the wrong way? Did I sleep the wrong way? Did I eat the wrong thing? What did I do? Embarrassment, because now not the whole world, but all of the people that were in your circle that saw you for months pregnant now know that you don't have a baby. And so even though it may be unrealistic to some, like wondering, why would you be embarrassed? You lost your child. But that is just a feeling that can come of just being embarrassed. Now I have to tell all these people that in my mind I failed, right? I was supposed to produce and I didn't. Loneliness. It can be a very lonely season, as grief can be in general, just because there are people who don't get what you're going through. You know, it's something that you've gone through that's very unique to you, and you feel like after a while people don't want to hear about it anymore. And so then you may just suffer in silence because you feel like, okay, I can't keep talking about it, so then you kind of isolate and you can become really lonely. Fear and loss of control. There is this common phenomenon of fear that I've experienced that comes upon some mothers. It could be fathers too, but I've definitely come in contact with mothers. There's just this feeling of I can't control things. Like things just happen unexpectedly outside of my control. I was supposed to protect the baby. I didn't. And I wasn't able to stop it. So who knows who else is going to die or what else is going to happen, what other tragedy is going to hit out of the blue. So that's a common one. Depression, of course. You already have postpartum depression for some, and then this just complicates it even more. It kind of can become a complicated depression. Anxiety and hypervigilance. There is a tendency to want to overprotect everyone else in your family and make sure everybody else is okay because you weren't able to protect that one child. So you want to make sure, where is everybody at? You're calling people, checking in. It's just this sense of hypervigilance. Loss of hopes and dreams. So there's a lot of hopes and dreams that go along with that, right? It's all the expectations of what their life was going to be like. You know, now I won't have this child that will maybe get married and have children and will walk them down the aisle. Conflict on how to refer to their child. That can be hard because there are some people who don't necessarily acknowledge you as a parent of that child because the child isn't here. And so the parent feels a conflict. Do I say I have 3 kids? Do I say I have 4 kids? I'm not honoring my lost child if I only say I have 3. But if I say 4, then people ask, oh, well, where's the 4th child? So there's a conflict sometimes with how to refer to your child. Anger with God and your faith being shaken. That's very common because you feel like maybe God let you down. How could he let this happen to you? I was praying. If you knew that there was something wrong with their child, maybe I was praying for healing and I totally believed that you would do it. And why didn't you? So there's a lot of times where people's faith is just shaken for a moment. How can I trust in this God that allowed something so bad and hurtful to happen to me? And how does he say he loves me? That's a common one. Jealousy of others who have babies. As much as we may not want to feel that, sometimes the family members and the parents do. Because you see other people giving birth, and sometimes you see people, even though it's not ours to say, we aren't the judges, but sometimes you feel like, wow, they got to keep their baby, and they don't even act responsibly. They don't even love you, Lord. They don't even follow you, but I didn't get to keep mine. So sometimes there's that jealousy. And then just irritability. There's just a sense of just kind of being irritable around that time. And you may not really know why, but it's just you're just not in a good space because of what happened. So we'll go to the next slide. So here's some challenges after a loss. Some challenges can be, what do you do with the baby's room that you've decorated that has all of those nice toys and stuffed animals, everything that you picked out just for that baby, all of the belongings, the clothes hanging in the closet, the rocking chair, the bassinet, the crib that's already up and decorated with a mobile. What do you do with all those things? That's a challenge after a loss because you're still reeling from the loss. And now someone wants you to tear down this room? Or do I keep it in case I decide to have another? So that's a challenge. The services and the burial, that was something that my family did not know we would have to experience. Again, during this time, there's so much going on and it's really traumatic that maybe you're not thinking rationally. So I don't know what we thought they would do with our baby, but we did not think we would have to plan a service and have a burial, an actual funeral. So that was just kind of eye-opening. And so for some people, that's really hard, especially because you're required to have a service that you don't want to have. You're required to bury a child that you don't want to bury. Returning to work, church, social settings, that's really hard because, again, everyone saw you at work pregnant. You were supposed to be out on maternity leave. you're coming back, and there's some that are going to know, and they feel awkward because they don't really know what to say. But then there's those who, for some reason, they didn't get the memo. And so they see you come back either with a flat stomach, or they see the husband come back after being gone for weeks. Oh, congratulations, how's the baby? And so you have those moments that you have to deal with, going back to church. All of your social settings, all of your friends, they all know about this loss. And now you don't want to talk about it. You want them to ask, but you don't want them to ask. It can really be a tough time. Also, the places that you frequented, that can be challenging. Sometimes we don't think about that. An example for me was I didn't realize that when I went to Jamba Juice every morning, that the person behind the counter remembered me. I don't remember having much of a conversation with him, but I know I went back 6 months later and he said, "Hey, how's the baby?" And so that can be really challenging because we have those places that we frequent that now when we go to the gym or go to the grocery store, they remember us and they ask questions. Going in public places with reminders all around, and you are hyper aware, or your awareness is heightened. So we went to the mall and it just felt like there were strollers everywhere and babies everywhere. They may have always been there, but now your awareness is heightened. So that's something that can happen. Or just walking into a store and seeing some baby clothing, that can it's a challenge. And friends and family having babies, the reason that one is challenging is not only do you not have your baby, but you feel an obligation to be happy for them, but maybe on the inside, you're not quite happy because why did they get to have their baby and I don't get to have mine? And so that's a challenge that we have to walk. Maybe family members not understanding why you can't come to the baby shower. And this is your cousin. Why wouldn't you go? The mother's body does not know that she did not bring a baby home. That was something that I was not expecting and can be very challenging. If you are a woman who was pregnant, your body is still going to produce milk as if you brought a baby home. If you had to have a C-section, you still have to go through 8 weeks of recovery. That is very painful. And you feel like I have nothing to show for it. Normally when you have the baby, it's okay because you feel like this was all worth it. So that can be a challenge, having to deal with your body. Longing for your baby is a challenge. There's just a longing to hold your baby, to hear them coo. And grieving between spouses can look very different at different times, different stages. There's sometimes you might be on the same page. There's sometimes where one is sad and one is doing pretty good. Something triggers you that doesn't trigger your spouse. And so that's a challenge because you need that support from your spouse, but then sometimes you're on different pages, and so it makes it tough. It makes it challenging. So now I want to talk about some helpful coping skills. This is for anyone who's experienced a loss, or if you know someone who's experienced a loss, maybe you could share these with them. Journaling was very helpful for me. Journaling is helpful just to get those feelings out, to get it out of you and just to get it to go somewhere. It's cathartic. Allowing yourself time to grieve, because that's going to look very different for everybody. And in my opinion, in our society, we are really not given the time that we need to just really sit with that grief. We're expected to go back to work. And family and friends want you to be back to who you used to be. And so it's tough. So give yourself that time that you need and ask for it. Ride the waves is another coping skill. The waves are going to come. There's going to be days when you're doing good, and then all of a sudden you got hit by a wave, and you don't know where that came from. And so then you may have some good days, and then, another wave comes. So just ride the wave. Don't expect yourself to just go from pain to good, and it just stays good. There will be waves. Therapy and psychiatry, very helpful for anyone experiencing a loss. Just someplace where you can go and talk about it, and that person doesn't get tired of hearing you talk about it. That's what they're there for. Psychiatry may be needed if you have a complicated depression afterwards, if your postpartum doesn't go away, or for some, it can turn into postpartum psychosis just as a result of it being so traumatic, especially if you've had previous trauma in your life. This can just really compact that. Support groups, those can be in person or online. And that's also another place where you can go and you can talk about it as much as you need to with people who get it. They understand. Reading books from others who have had a similar experience, that was very helpful for me. I read so many books. I just felt like I just needed to survive. Who else has gone through this and how did they make it through? And it helped me to feel like I wasn't weird and I wasn't alone in this, thing that happened to us. Incorporating your baby into the fabric of your life. That is another coping skill that may be helpful, because sometimes just the feeling of having to act like this didn't happen, like there's not an elephant in the room, is hard. But when you can incorporate them into the fabric of your life, you don't have to act like it didn't happen. Let's talk about it. Let's talk about her. Let's talk about him. Finding ways to honor the memory of your baby. That was really helpful for our family. One of the things that we have done, and actually I read it in a book, is I have a necklace that I got made with her birth date on it. And so when there are special occasions where she would have been there with us, I'll wear the necklace in order to kind of symbolize Riley's here with us. My husband has a bracelet. We kind of have different things. One of my daughters got a tattoo with the nickname that we were going to have for our daughter. So we have different ways that we have incorporated her into our life and honor her memory. We celebrate her birthday every year by getting a cake and maybe doing something we thought she would want to do at that age just to celebrate her. Refrain from social media for a period of time. That's one that I have experienced that many of my clients don't think about. But Facebook pops up memories. And so what happens is all throughout that next year, there's the post that you put up about, I'm pregnant, here's the sonogram picture. And then every month, you kind of did that following the pregnancy. This is what's happening at this stage. And so those pop up and remind you that my baby's not here. So sometimes we may need to refrain from social media. For another reason, it would be because other people are posting pictures of their babies and their family members' babies, and that can be tough. And staying connected to those who you know care about you and your family. Again, we tend to want to isolate and just go into a hole, get in the bed, not get up, not talk to anyone. But we need to allow people to support us and hold up our arms like Aaron did for Moses during that time. We need someone to come in and comfort us, and so to allow them to do that, even if that just looks like sitting there. Okay, so what should family and friends know? The other ones were coping skills for the family members who've experienced the loss. But what about family and friends who don't know what to do, but they want to be there? One of the things that I want you to know is there's no getting back to normal. So when you may want to ask them, hey, when are you going to get back to normal? When are you going to get back to your old self? I miss how you used to be. They're never going to be who they were before this happened. So that's what family members and friends need to know. There's no getting back to normal. What they will do is create a new normal, and then everyone will have to learn to relate to them in a new way. They are parents of that child. That is something to remember, because sometimes people don't remember them on Mother's Day and on Father's Day. They forget that. So if that was their only child that they gave birth to and they have no other children, they won't be included in Mother's Day and Father's Day celebrations. But they had a child. That was their baby. And so just remembering that they are parents of that child. Family and friends should know that there are memorable days throughout the year that are hard, and maybe you can ride the waves with them. So it's going to be hard on Mother's Day, maybe some years, maybe hard on Father's Day, maybe hard on the birthday of that child. It might be hard the day they were going to start kindergarten. I even met a couple who they were at their niece's wedding, and their niece was the same age as their daughter, and so their daughter could have possibly been getting married at that time. That was a hard day. And so for family and friends to understand when we're like, well, what's wrong with you? You know, it's been 10 years, or this is a happy occasion. Well, they're still suffering. They still miss their loved one. Allow them the time they need to grieve. It may look different for you. It may look different for someone else that you know who's gone through this, but every person is different. So allow them the space and the time that they need to grieve. the child was already a part of their lives. So I think that's something big for family and friends to know. The mother was carrying the child. She felt that child moving inside of her. The family was talking to the stomach, watching her stomach move, shopping together, talking about what they were going to do at certain times of the year. This is the outfit we're going to pick out for Christmas. And everyone was already involved and invested in this child. So just to remember that because some people will say, well, people tell me, well, it's okay. You didn't get to know the baby. And yeah, they did. The father, the children, the grandparents, and the aunts and uncles, they grieve too. So I want family and friends to know that, not only focusing on the mother. That was something that my husband, it was challenging for him because people would focus on me. And they would forget about he was the father and our girls were the sisters of Riley. And my mother still grieves for her granddaughter that she doesn't get to hold, and so that there are other family members who are sad, and to allow them to be sad as well. And also that bringing up the child does not make them sad. You have some people that say, well, I don't want to bring it up, or I don't want to talk about it because I don't want to make them sad. I don't want to bring it up if they weren't thinking about it. And so something to remember is that we're always thinking about Riley. She's a part of our life, and you won't make me sad by bringing it up. I already have my own days of sadness. I miss her, and you bringing it up actually brings me joy because it shows me that you remember her. It gives me an opportunity to talk about her. So just to remember that. And how can you help? Family and friends, how can you help? Immediately after the loss, it's always helpful for a meal train, just to provide food for the family. They don't have to worry about what they're going to eat. And taking care of their children, making sure that their kids eat, because a lot of times the parents they don't really want to eat, but making sure the kids are eating. Right after the loss, you can help by knowing that there's no right words. Just sit with them. There's nothing you can say to make it better, to make them feel better. It is what it is. And so there's no right words. Don't try to find them. Just sit with them. Help get them out of the house. If they can, help them get some air. Just get out of the house. Just change the scenery. I know my husband and I, we just needed to go for a drive. We would just get out and get some fresh air. Initially, refrain from these items. Reciting scripture, all things work together for the good. For a lot of times, people don't want to hear that at that moment. There may be people of faith, and they know that, but at that moment, all things work together for the good to those that love him. People don't want to hear that. So maybe refrain from that at that moment. Cliche sayings, people that say, oh, well, baby's in a better place. Well, for me, the best place is with me. So I may not feel like that at that time. And connecting with others who had a loss. Also, family and friends, what it is they want you to feel better. They want to fix it for you, which can't happen. You just have to go through it. And so connecting, they want to connect you. Oh, I have a friend who had a loss. Let me connect you guys. Or can I have my coworker call you? Not right now. So immediately after a loss, that's usually not a good time, because they are still trying to process and deal with what's happened to them and figure out their own feelings. And so talking to someone else that they don't know usually isn't good in the beginning, maybe down the road. And then also ongoing support after the immediacy of the loss. Ask about their child periodically. Just ask about Riley. Give remembrance gifts. That's a thoughtful thing to do. And again, it's going to vary from family to family. Some people don't want this, and some people will, so you kind of just judge it per family. Sending cards on special holidays to let them know that you remember. Sending a card on Mother's Day, Father's Day, the birthday of the child. Understand if they cannot attend events due to babies being around. So that's some support that you could give them. Maybe even let them off the hook. You know, if it's hard for you, you don't have to come to the baby shower. We understand. We know that you still love us. Or my husband had a fraternity brother who they had a baby, and they were naming their baby Riley. And so we just couldn't go to the baby shower. It was just too tough. And so being able to understand that. And understanding that grief looks different for everyone. So families could just really understand that. It's going to look different. It may not look like how you would do grief. It may not look like how you've seen it on TV. It may look better or worse. And either way, it's just different. And just wanted to give a few resources here. Empty Cradle is a resource here in San Diego where they have support groups. They have an online group, a Facebook group, and they have actual meetings here throughout the county. Grief Share is another one. If you go to the Grief Share website, you can just type in your zip code and you will find a church anywhere throughout the country that has a Grief Share meeting. So they're in all different states. And so that was actually one that helped me a lot, was Grief Share. Share Pregnancy and Infant Loss Support Group. They have a really good online support system. They have great Facebook groups, and they also have a lot of resources that you can purchase online. Still Standing Magazine is a nice one to get into your email box. They just have articles about loss, and they're really helpful and supportive. Star Legacy Foundation is another one. Another good support for stillbirth loss. And then the Compassionate Friends, that last one that I have there, that's just for loss of any child. And so they have a lot of good resources. And so here's some books I just wanted to highlight. I wrote a book about my experience. My journaling actually turned into a book. And the purpose of it was to help other women and families know that they're not alone. And my quest for rediscovering faith in God after infant loss. And so the purpose is to give to people so that they can experience that feeling of not being alone. I donate them to hospitals, to other support groups, and to people that I hear about who've had a loss. And some of the books that helped me were I Will Carry You by Angie Smith. Her husband is a singer in the group Selah, and they had a loss, and that book really helped me. When I Lay My Isaac Down by Carol Kent, that one was huge in my healing. Love Mom, A Mother's Journey from Loss to Hope. That was another one that was really helpful for me. And the last one here is for children. If you have little ones and they don't understand what's going on. And so we bought this book for our daughter. She was younger at the time. We were going to have a baby, but we had an angel instead. Because sometimes we forget that the kids are grieving too, and they don't really understand what happened. And so this helps us to explain it to them. And I wanted to do this last quote. This is from Barbara Bush. I'm not sure if many of you know that she experienced the loss of a daughter. But she says, "The death of a child is so painful, both emotionally and spiritually, that I truly wondered if my own heart and spirit would ever heal. I soon learned that I could help myself best by helping others." And I really like that quote a lot. It was really helpful for me to know all that she's done for our country and to know that she had experienced a pain that was so deep and that she was still able to go on. And for me, this ministry is similar to what she's saying, being able to help others. And so just the fact that there's no way that I could help families through this had I not experienced it myself. There are so many pieces that are so unique that I would not have felt comfortable or confident to walk anyone through this. And so I thank the Lord that I could turn this into a ministry to be able to bless others.
Dr. Watkins, thank you so much. Your gentle spirit is coming through and also giving us great advice on how to care for people who are going through this as well. Why don't we start with some of what you were talking about? I think the issue between, say, a husband and wife as they have the loss, how do they take care of each other? In other words, how do they nurture each other? You talked a little bit about some of the pain that each would experience in his or her life with the loss of the child. How did you do this with your husband, or how do you do this professionally, of course, with people with loss and their grief? How do they care for each other in the midst of this? Because they're changed. They're both changed forever, as you had said. It's just a new normal, I think, is what you were suggesting. Can you give us some advice as to how can a couple that perhaps has gone through this? The reason I was raising this question, I was also thinking as a pastor for years, it was one of the first things I noticed in being a pastor in meeting with couples who had lost a child, that no one wanted to know about that, and they didn't necessarily quote Romans when he was talking about that God's going to work good in everything, those who love God and are called according to his purposes. But what they would oftentimes say is, well, you can just have another baby. Or they would use some sort of statement to decrease their own anxiety.
Yes.
So there's a lot of pain that people are experiencing, and realize that it was alone in suffering. And I remember seeing that, and now as a therapist for many decades, that also see that as the silent pain that a couple will go through. So could you help us a little bit?
Yeah.
How do you do that as a couple? Of course, you and your husband are still living with that.
Yes.
And so are your children, of course, and your family and others. So how do you nurture each other when you're both experiencing this?
One of the things that I advise my couples is just communicating. We had several people in our lives during that time that reinforced for us that communication was the key. And I had heard of families that had broken apart as a result of the loss of a child. And that was one thing that my husband and I would determine, that we would not lose our marriage as a result of this loss. And so we were determined to take that advice and to communicate. I also give advice to some of my clients to ask the person, what do they need? Ask them, what do they need? How can I support you? What does that look like? Are you okay if I cry when you're not crying? So asking them. Also, another thing that my husband actually came up with was a number system for our family. And so what that did was, how are you doing today? On a between 1 and 5, scale of 1 to 5. 1 is not a good day at all. 5 being greatest day I've ever had. Where are you today? And so that was the way that we could communicate, because it kind of just gave us an easy way to just check in with each other. How are you doing today? I'm about a 3. Okay. If I say I'm a 1, that may mean that there's a little bit more questioning. You might want to check in and see what's really going on with me. So just being able to communicate and be honest about your feelings, even if you think the other person is having a good day and you kind of don't want to bring them down. I feel like we owe that to our mate, to let them know how we're feeling, how are we doing. We don't want to hide that from them, because really they're the only person that can be there for us in the way that we need, because they're the only other one that really feels that same pain. They were another parent.
Yes. Can you talk to us about how to share our feelings? So many people I know in your practice and my practice that a lot of times we'll talk with them about how to share feelings, and many of us have been taught how to hide our feelings, or to stuff our feelings, or to kind of walk away from our feelings, or act as though they're not there. What would be some practical ways, like this sounded brilliant with you and your husband, he came up with this idea, so you were a 2. How did you then talk about your feelings? Do you share them? Would your husband ask you? How does that take place?
I think it's really good if both could be in play. If the spouse is open to asking more, and also the person that's being asked open to sharing. So it's really about being vulnerable and honest about how you're feeling, regardless of if you think it's going to sound crazy. Oh my gosh, I don't really want anybody to know that that's what I'm thinking. I'm kind of embarrassed that I'm feeling this way. So one of the things is just to say, I'm feeling this way. Or one of the things I also share with clients is to say what you need. What do you need right now? So as a spouse, you could ask the one who may be at a 2 that day, kind of what's going on, and what do you need from me? Is there anything that I can do to help? And so just kind of checking in with them and seeing, what do you need? And if you're the one who's being asked, just being honest and vulnerable, transparent, and open about exactly how you're feeling. Because, again, that reduces the loneliness.
Yes, so could you give some examples that you feel comfortable sharing, like what you might need that day? Like it might be, I just need a hug. I just came from a session just about 2 hours ago, and the person was saying, when I'm in grave pain, I just needed at that moment a hug. And the mate was surprised, not realizing that was what was needed and would have been very helpful. What are some other issues that could describe what you would need and how you would ask for that? I
know for me, one of the things that I needed to ask for was time alone, because it's great that you have people who are there who want to support you, but sometimes if you have a lot of family that's come in and there's people around a lot, and you just might need a moment. I would just need a moment to be alone with my feelings. And so I had to ask for that sometimes, especially because if we're saying we don't want to isolate, then your family members may, say, hey, we don't want you off alone. And so just asking for what you need. I needed to journal. I needed just time to myself. Also, one of the things, I experienced a lot of fear right after. It was just this intense fear of dying, fear that someone else close to me was going to die, because it was just so random and unpredictable. And so I needed to be close to my husband a lot. So in bed, I know you want your space, but I can't give it to you right now. I needed to touch, I need to touch you. I need to know that you're right there and that you're okay, that you're not going anywhere. And so for each person, you kind of ask for what you need. If you need, I just need to get out and get some air. I know my parents were there, and Greg and I, we kind of feel bad because your parents came in town, they want to help you out, but we needed to get out of the house. And so we would just say, hey, we got to go for a drive. We'll be back. We can't entertain right now.
So you're really talking about it's very helpful to be really specific. Like you were kind of joking a little bit with you and your husband, but you were being very specific with your husband. You needed to be touched by him. And so it's very, very specific. That sounds a little bit elementary, yet it can be very helpful because the other person might not know. Like, I'm not speaking for your husband, but he may not have known that would have been helpful to you. And so it's actually speaking out for your needs. I have one more question surrounding that. As we were working through this earlier, as you were presenting, rather, that when your needs are different from your mate's needs, your husband's needs in this case, how did you manage that when it became very apparent that your needs were very different from your husband's needs about this horrific loss of Riley? What do you do with that when it's so different? You would think they'd be very similar. I know you mentioned earlier in your presentation that they can be very different. What does a couple do? What would a family do in helping the couple and family in that type of experience? Is that more common?
Yes, it's actually more common. Just because, as we know, males and females in general can be very different in how we handle anger or how we handle sadness or grief. It can manifest in different ways. So for me, it may look like crying, and I'm not saying this was true, but for my husband, it may look like anger. It may look like lashing out. So if it looks very different, being able to give that person that space. And I'm not saying it's easy, because it was tough when we were in those times where we knew, okay, he's in a very different spot than me. Like, today is a day I want to talk about her, and today's a day that he does not want to talk about her. But just telling myself, he's sad too. This is what he needs. And I just need to be okay with it. And one of the things that also helped was we went to counseling together. And so we met with a therapist regularly for a little while together, and that gives you the opportunity to talk about those differences with someone there, a caring professional. We had a Christian counselor who's able to just kind of help you navigate those waters that may be a little choppy during that season. Get someone else in there that can help.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. There's another question here that was written. What guidance or words of wisdom can be given to a parent who has a history of a loss and is pregnant again but lives in fear of losing their baby? Let me repeat that question. Okay. So what guidance or words of wisdom can be given to a parent who has a history of a loss and is pregnant again but lives in fear of losing their baby? That sounds very anxiety-producing and painful, to say the least. Yeah. What advice would you give?
Definitely not to sound cliche at all, but I would like to say that if that person is a Christian and, has a walk of faith with God, just really surrendering to Him, as hard as it is, because we have no control, right? And the fear is real. The fear makes sense because of what you've already been through. And so that fear of it happening again, especially when you get to that same stage in that pregnancy where you had the previous loss. And so really just being able to completely surrender the entire process to God, your will be done, not my will. That has been something that I've had to learn during this whole season of walking this out, really having to learn that I'm not in control. My plan is not what God is following. He's not following my plan. He had a plan for Riley before we had a plan for Riley. But what happened is when I got pregnant, I had a new plan for Riley of how her life was going to look. But he never said that. That was my story. And so I remember my spiritual mother called me one day, and that was the first time that I had anyone explain to me about the sovereignty of God. And it was when I was grieving. And it just really helped me to understand, you're right. He is sovereign. He can do whatever he wants. And I fully trust that he's good and that he only wants good for me. So even though it feels bad, I truly have to trust in you and in your plan and just completely surrender it. So my relationship with Christ, it got rocky for a moment, and I was really angry. And then it's gone deeper because I've really had to learn about complete surrender to his will, to his plan for my life.
You've talked a lot about this surrender throughout this evening, and this is a really important concept because the sense of peace is, in my opinion, professionally and as a pastor, is the absence of anxiety. And anxiety is anticipating, kind of anticipatory, and oftentimes fearful anticipation. We can have positive anticipation, like the first time someone's going to Disneyland as a child. You know, that would be some anxiety, but it would be positive about what, is going to happen at Disneyland. But this is certainly not positive anticipation and anticipating. So this idea of full surrender, the first commandment talks about that we have no other gods. And there's a tendency and a temptation for each of us to want to become a god. In fact, that was the first temptation in the garden, is you'll become like God. And so could you talk a little bit about your own experience and professionally helping people to more fully surrender to God himself? It's not like turning your head and acting as though it's not happening, but we are surrendering to the God of this universe, who loves us incredibly, beyond what we can even imagine. Like you were saying about Riley. He loves Riley so much that he had a plan, still does, this plan for Riley that's going on into eternity, of course. So how could you help us, in your experience and then as a professional, talk just a little more about this idea of really full submission? Really what Christ did. He demonstrates this for us, of course. We put it in the present tense. What are your thoughts?
One scripture that I give to my clients, and I know I mentioned not giving cliche scriptures, but one of the ones that I give to my clients is when Jesus was in the Garden of Gethsemane, and he knew what God's plan was and why he was here. And he still said, if there is any way, please let this cup pass from me. But nevertheless, thy will be done. So he even didn't want to have to go through the pain and the agony of what he knew the cross was going to bring. And he even said, but not my will, thy will be done. That's that concept of just full surrender. And surrender is not something that's passive. It's something that's very active. We have to make a choice, and we have to make a choice of daily surrender, which is why the Bible says, pick up your cross daily and follow me, because it is a moment by moment, everyday walk and struggle to continue to surrender to God and say, not my will, but thy will be done. So when we feel that anxiety coming, following, and I'll even say the scripture to myself just out loud, be anxious for nothing, but in everything through prayer and supplication with thanksgiving, make your request known to God, and the peace of God, like saying that out. And I will give you another tip of something that I had to do during that season of surrender. I had to write scriptures out on note cards, and I kept them in my purse. And I would pull them out and read them throughout the day. When that fear would grip me and want to overtake me, I would get my cards out and I would just start reading the scriptures.
Yes.
And I would go to sleep with Bible scriptures playing in my ears just so that I could stay in that state of His Word. His Word is what's truth, not my feelings, not what the outside looks like. His Word is truth.
So your example of Jesus, I know you're referring to Philippians 4:6-8, that be anxious for nothing. Mm-hmm. Such a wonderful, powerful scripture. And then with Jesus, mm-hmm. He exemplified that it's okay to have our feelings. Mm-hmm. That's an important piece. So often little children are unfortunately taught, mm-hmm. not by everyone, but can be taught not to allow feelings. Mm-hmm. That the feeling doesn't mean that there's something wrong with me. It's just what I feel. And Jesus, He shared His feelings in that powerful passage. Yeah. And yet you nevertheless, not my will be done, but thy will be done. So that full surrender does include perhaps the ability to genuinely feel what we're feeling. Mm-hmm. However, we don't want to leave out the core of it, and that is that we are submitting mm-hmm. to the Father. It's such a counterintuitive mm-hmm. thought in our day and age, which we want to take charge, take control, be in charge of your life. You choose who you are. Right. All these various languaged issues that are trying to put us back in control when mm-hmm. we are really not in control. Right. And so that submission actually will likely decrease one's anxiety and one's mm-hmm. pain. Mm-hmm. So I'm hearing you say that even with you and your husband and with those with whom you're privileged, and perhaps I know I'm privileged to work as well mm-hmm. with loss, that it's helping the person to realize that their feelings are okay. They're not necessarily bad. Right. Yet if we stay in those feelings, which Jesus did not, mm-hmm. He worked at embracing the feelings but then turning to the Father. Mm-hmm. Many times throughout the Scripture, mm-hmm. He would do that. Mm-hmm. So we go ahead and experience our feelings, yet at the same time we're saying, I'm going to put my trust in the Father. So you said on a daily basis, I'm crucified with Christ. It's no longer I who live, but Christ who lives within me. And that's done on a daily moment by moment basis. In fact, St. Paul said that we should pray without ceasing. So it's a constant, just like we breathe. If we don't breathe, we would cease, we would expire. But we constantly seek for that relationship and to be open. Mm-hmm. I think it was Oswald Chambers. My wife and I read from Oswald Chambers in the Bible daily. It's a part of our morning, and he once said that prayer is not getting a particular answer, but getting into right relationship. I don't know if you're familiar with Oswald Chambers and My Utmost for His Highest, one of the most well-read devotional books on the planet today. He never meant for it to be a devotional. He was just preaching these messages at a small Christian college, Bible college, I believe it was, and then his wife, once he went to heaven, that his wife thought she would kind of bring these materials together, and it became a lovely, wonderful devotional. But you are talking about that submission, but also being willing to actually feel the feeling. So on this particular question, with that fear, and the fear of losing this upcoming baby, which that could be horrific for that person. I'm sorry for the pain that person in the audience this evening has expressed. Anything else you'd like to share about that idea of fear or concern that this person might have?
Yeah, I think I would just want to add that that constant fear and worrying can prevent us from enjoying the moment. And, in the Scripture, even in the Lord's Prayer, when it talks about give us this day our daily bread, and then I want to say in Matthew when it talks about, today has enough cares of its own, so take no thought for what you are wear, what you should eat, what you should drink, because today has enough cares of its own, right? Take no thoughts for tomorrow. And so with that, one of the things I've had to learn is just to be able to enjoy the moment. Enjoy the pregnancy today. Because a lot of times what we do is we're living in the future. We're living for the future. And so we're focused on when the baby gets here and when I bring the baby home, and we miss today. We can't control the future. We don't know what's going to happen in the future. But we do know at this moment, I have this child with me, and just focus on enjoying that moment and just enjoy every moment, not knowing the outcome, but trusting that it's in God's hands. He knows what's best. He does love us. And just focus on what He's given you today.
Mm-hmm. So part of submission is being able to trust. Actually, we don't just create trust. We lean into the one who is trustworthy. I am the way, the truth, and the life, Jesus told about Himself. And right in the middle of that sandwich is truth, which we trust in Him and His sovereignty. The next question here relates to, can I ever get over this? You refer to this in suggesting that people do not. Let's talk a little more about that. Can I ever get over this, the loss? And so many people would say, get on with your life.
Right.
Why don't you, just move forward?
Yeah.
Why aren't you doing better? And if you're a Christian, why would you be sullen about this or have any emotion other than joy?
Right.
Which was kind of ridiculous, isn't it? Why would you have joy over a loss? I'm not sure that's realistic at all.
Yeah.
But what do you say about that? You referred to that. What can I ever get over this?
I say no.
Okay.
We don't get over it. We get through it.
Mm.
It's not something that you can get over. You can't go under it. You can't go around it. It's something that we have to go through. And we have to walk through it. And it is now a part of who we are. It's a part of our story. It's a part of our life journey. So we don't get over it. You go through it. And that's going to be true with any loss, right? If you've lost a parent or a sibling or a spouse, you don't get over that. You just get through it every day, one day at a time, with God's grace.
So it's beautifully said, I think, how you said that. What would be some language that I could use? Say I'm your client or one of your patients. What would you say that the person that goes out and and says, I can't really say that to my friends or family. They want me to be over it because it causes them anxiety. They feel uncomfortable with my loss. What would be some language that someone could use with friends that I'm really not getting over it, I'm getting through this? What would be some helpful language they could use?
I think some helpful language would be to let them know, if someone specifically said that, like, why don't you get over it, to let them know that it's not something that I'm ever going to get over. It's just something that I'm going to carry with me for the rest of my life and incorporate with me. I'm not going to use it as a crutch, and it may not handicap me, but this is something that I'm going to carry with me. And to let them know that I will be Riley's mother forever. So how can I get over being the mother of my child? I can't. I am forever Riley's mother. So I won't ever get over her, but I'm going to carry her with me in my heart throughout the rest of my life.
Okay.
So I think if they can let others know that.
Yes, a good way to say that. This next question says, I feel guilty when time passes without thinking of my child. I know I've had so many patients over the years that would say, oh, I feel so guilty, I didn't even think of that child. Or in other losses, I didn't think of that other person, and now I feel guilty.
Yeah.
How do you help a person that would say that? I feel guilty when time passes without really thinking about and of my child.
Yeah. I think I would like to share with someone who is experiencing that to not give in to that guilt. You love that child regardless, and so because they're not here every day and you don't see them every day, sometimes that can be a tendency. But if you're feeling a need to remember them, figure out ways to incorporate them into your life. If that happens and you don't feel comfortable with that feeling of, oh my gosh, I feel like I've forgotten about them, or I haven't mentioned her name in a long time, or we celebrated this whole holiday and we didn't even mention her, figure out ways to incorporate them into your life so that that doesn't happen, whether that's putting a picture out, whether it is that we've bought a specific ornament for our Christmas tree for Riley so that on Christmas she's incorporated. Another year we decided to put a stocking on the fireplace with the rest of our stockings to incorporate her. So if that is something that you don't want to happen and you feel guilty about it, figure out how you can prevent that. How can you incorporate your child? Maybe you just wear a necklace and it just has a little footprint on it. So now they're always there. Every time you look in the mirror, you see that. Or a bracelet or a ring with a birthstone in it, so that every time you wear it, you remember your child. So I would give that guidance.
What do you do at that moment, say, because you mentioned your necklace and, talking about a ring, and when you think of Riley, how do you allow yourself to both grieve and nurture yourself at that moment? What happens to you, Doctor? What happens to you at that moment?
Usually during that moment, now it's been 7 years, so it's going to look different depending on the stage that you're in. Of course, early on, it brought tears. I would cry. Very early on, it might send me back home to the bed, But now, I hear a song on the radio and I'm like, oh my gosh, I love this song. Let me see who's singing it. And I look, Riley Clemens. Okay. So now what I do is I go, hi, Riley. I take it as an opportunity to remember her and like she's saying hi to me. So for me now, when I see my necklace or I see her name, who knew that there are like 2 streets in San Diego called Riley Street? But of course, after I have a loss, then I'm driving down the street and I look up, oh, I'm on Riley Street. And instead of getting sad now, I remember and I just say, hi, Riley, I miss you. I just kind of talk to her and so that's kind of what I do. And I won't say that there's never moments when I get sad. There's still moments. It just depends on what it is. They're not as often. And if I have it come upon me, I just feel it. I just go with it in that moment. Yeah.
So rather than stuffing it and acting as though it's not there, it's allowing yourself to feel that, to allow it. Some of the specialists will suggest in grief care and grief loss, that we allow each person to uniquely grieve. No one grieves the same, even though we know there are stages and ways in which people will go through. This next question deciphers between just a loss and miscarriage. So it's focusing a bit on miscarriage. What advice or wisdom would you share with moms who have had miscarriages? Sometimes it can feel like your pain isn't the same as for someone who lost a child later in the pregnancy. Can you help us to understand the differences between those two?
Yes. For anyone who's experienced a miscarriage, which would be before the first 20 weeks of the pregnancy, remembering that the moment of conception, you had a child inside of you. So for those parents, that was your child that you brought into this world. And so not allowing others to discount your experience or your being a parent. Because many times what I've heard from people is that others don't allow them to acknowledge that they had a baby. Oh, well, you were only 3 months. And so not allowing people to do that to you. Reminding them that, no, that was my child. I lost a child. I didn't just lose tissue, as some people might say. I lost a child. And so I think the main thing is acknowledging it yourself, not allowing society or others to dictate what your grief should look like, and that it is okay to grieve that loss as any loss of any child.
Okay. So what would be language that one could use? I know you just mentioned some. What would be language you could say to someone who is really projecting onto you their own insecurities related to that, and that you could say something that would be non-threatening to them, but yet honoring of you and your child? What kind of language? So someone is rude or they're not being kind. I guess if someone was completely rude, you would maybe just move the other direction. Yeah. What's some words to say about that to someone so that you take care of yourself? There's nothing more painful in many ways when there's non-closure. Jesus once said, "It is finished." And that was really powerful words around the idea of sin. That bringing closure is very important. So even in a dialogue where that might happen, where the person is somehow trying to decrease their own anxiety by discounting your child, the child that God created, what kind of language would you suggest a person use?
I think it might be helpful just to let them know that that is hurtful for you when they say that, and that, I did have a child. That was my child. I carried a child. I conceived a child. So when you discount my grief or my pregnancy, that's very hurtful for me. And so just kind of like just being honest, not stuffing it, not laughing it off, or not maybe not even acting like it's not worth it. It is worth it. And so just letting them know that's very hurtful. And then how do you feel about it? or how would you prefer that they refer to your child or your pregnancy? Just asking for what you need.
Mm-hmm. Because I think sometimes I've had patients who, when they didn't quite know what to say when someone did that, but they walked away and felt like their experience was, not only was I just dishonored, so was my child. I wish I would have stood up for my child at least, and not to mention standing up for oneself. So there, you just mentioned a very honoring way to do that, even though perhaps the other person doesn't receive it. You've been able to assertively stand up. There's a difference between aggression and assertion. Assertion means that I'm standing up for what is right. Aggression is I'm out of control, or I'm trying to take out my anger and frustration on another person rather than dealing with it in a healthy way.
And I have another example of that. It's just a little different. It's not a miscarriage, but we had a stillbirth. But an example of that is me having the need to honor Riley's life. And so having a desire to say, when someone asks me, how many children do you have? Saying 4. I have 4 children. And knowing that it's going to be uncomfortable for someone, and that usually that kind of shuts down the conversation, because they're like, okay, so you have 3 here. Where's the other one? I say, oh, she's in heaven. Usually there's silence, or it's kind of awkward. And I had to get okay with that, because I was trying to make them comfortable.
Yes.
But what I felt like I was doing is, like you said, I would go home later and feel like I dishonored Riley just because I didn't want it to be awkward. And that didn't feel right either. And so I had to figure out what to do. So, when I want to say I have 4 children, I say I have 4 children. And some people may not be able to handle that.
Yes. I discovered this, I remember, as a young pastor years ago and conducting funerals. And it was very difficult to stand up front with the parents, and this one family had lost their son. He was in a casket right there. And people were coming up, and one quoted Romans, 8, talking about that God's going to work good. And I remember just becoming very angry. I'm a pastor, supposed to be smiling, making everybody feel good, and I was not feeling good. In fact, I wanted to almost reach out and kind of grab the person, shake him a little bit, and say, please don't do that. And what they were tending to do, I realized early on, they were trying to decrease their own anxiety by saying something to the person. So a person with loss will oftentimes have people around them who are attempting, maybe they really do care deeply about you and the loss of your child, but they're really trying to perhaps decrease their own anxiety. So learning how to be more assertive, you might even practice that in your own privacy, the privacy of your home, where you practice saying something. Say something in the mirror. Maybe practice with your mate. That you would practice, well, this is how I'm going to respond to that. So you begin to feel comfortable with being assertive.
And it's interesting that you say that, because I know some people would think that that's kind of like weird, or why would I do that? But I did that. I actually sat at Panera with my cousin who was here from out of town, and I said, I need to come up with a script. And so we just sat there, and I tried different things, and then I said, I don't like that one. And then she told me of someone she knew and how she said it, and I thought, I kind of like that one. And so I did that. We just kind of practiced, because I said, I need to be ready on the spot, because I always felt bad afterwards if I didn't honor Riley. So that's funny, because I did that.
Yes, because that can, if you stayed with the concept, I didn't honor Riley, that can create deep shame. Like, what's wrong with me? I'm not good enough a parent. I'm not a good enough person. Why do I not care enough? So practicing, that's very interesting that you practiced that script, and that was helpful to you to be able to voice that. We are, people of God are people who stand up and say, this is right and this is perhaps not wrong. It's, according to Scripture, it says it is not right. And to do it in an assertive way that's kind and generous, because people will sense if it's done with generosity. In other words, the Spirit of God, not of us. So as we close out, we have just a few minutes left. I wonder if there's anything else that you would like to share with us. Dr. Watkins, this has been a delight. I happen to have the privilege that we are actually colleagues at the Center for Enriching Relationships, and Dr. Watkins has this wonderful, you can see it and hear it and sense it, a wonderful, genuine spirit, and knows the Lord. and the beauty of your skills. And so I'm so thankful that you're participating with us this evening. However, as we begin to close, anything else you would like to share? There are people listening online. There'll be people listening to this video later. And of course, we have our audience here at Skyline Church in San Diego. What would you like to close with this evening?
I want to start with, I think, did we have one more card over there? Did you get a card?
I did. I've got them all.
You did them all?
Yes.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry. I didn't mean. I just thought there was a card over there.
I don't see any more, but
nope.
we
Okay.
were able to.
No problem.
Yes.
I want to say thank you for the opportunity. This has been a wonderful blessing just to be able to talk about this topic, something that is near and dear to me, something that I know a lot of people suffer in silence with. And so just the opportunity to kind of break the silence or start the process of breaking the silence. I'm hoping that there are people who maybe weren't able to come out but are streaming and watching this and can share either if it's not their own experience, that they can share this with other people that they know that have experienced losses. I'm hoping that people, family and friends will now know how to engage a little bit better with someone who has experienced a loss. So I just want to say thank you for the opportunity, and I hope that we could incorporate this type of loss into the fabric of our lives like we do with every other loss, and really embrace the parenthood of a child, even though they're no longer here with us.
Okay. Well, thank you very much, Dr. Watkins. And we are going to close out this evening. We are so thankful that you came out this evening. For those listening live streaming, we are grateful that you've taken the time to be with us this evening. And those perhaps listening to this as a video later that will be online, let's close our evening with a word of prayer, shall we? Heavenly Father, we thank you for the gift of life. It's a wonderful gift. We actually don't determine life. You're the one who creates life. And there is a time that each of us is taken home, and we leave this world. And we thank you that you care deeply for each and every person. We're created in your image, and we're specially created by you. Thank you for the gift that we have to co-create with you, that wonderful gift of life. So we praise you this evening, and we just ask you to bless each and every person who has the privilege of tying into this particular evening and this broadcast. We give you praise. In Jesus' name I pray. Amen. Once again, thank you for joining us at My Therapist Says. Good evening.